Welcome to the Secret Gardener Survival, and if you've got a metal building like this one, which is my barn for my livestock, you realize that can get pretty hot in the summertime, and even a painted reflective aluminum roof can be 30 to 40 degrees higher than the ambient temperature. So if it's 90 degrees out like it is right now, it can be 130 degrees on that roof. And metal also transfers heat, so you can have transfer heat into the barn and make it hotter for your animals as well. So came up with this idea, basically using a sprinkler system and a green garden hose, and put that up at the top center of the roof, and turned it on, put on the spigot, and that lowered the ambient temperature inside the barn so that it was 10 degrees cooler than the outside temperatures. Okay, it is now 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day, and it is now 100 degrees outside. It is 82 degrees here in the house, and we'll go outside and we will see what the temperature is in the barn. And we're still keeping this roof nice and wet here. Let's go see what the temperature is like inside the barn. Little boys are here. Ooh, it's nice and cool in here. Yeah. Run away, boys. Run away. Wow. Tell you what. Well, 90 or 88 degrees. So normally it would be actually hotter in here because of the heat transfer, even hotter than outside. So this is really doing well. So that's keeping my animals safer, and everybody's better off as a result of it. But the only problem is, if you're just doing this on a regular roof, you'd be wasting an awful lot of water, and you know, and if it's 100+ degrees and you're trying to keep your livestock from dying, you know, that would be a way to certainly do it, but you'd be wasting an awful lot of water that you'd either have to be pumping out of a well, or you'd have to be paying for it if you were on city water. So we actually have a cistern in the back that collects this rainwater. And you can see that there's water going down the roof and going into the gutters, and that goes back into the water tank. You know, as I mentioned before, that's a lot of water to waste. Even though there's not a lot coming out, there's still a lot of water being wasted if I was just going to use the same water every time. But with the cistern, we can actually recycle the water, and I can do that using a 12-volt pump, and that 12-volt pump can run off the solar that I have in my barn, which I had shown you before on the front panels here. So check out that video as well in terms of how I solar powered my barn. I'll leave a link in the description, and let me show you the solar system. Okay, so this is my update and part 2 of how to cool off your metal building with a garden hose. And what I've done is I've got that garden hose running up on the roof, and in order to keep from wasting water or having to just basically pull it out of the well and use that to cool the building, I've got this 275, 300 or so gallon cistern here that collects rainwater off the roof. So both sides of the roof, we've got a gutter going all the way around, and then a gutter going around this, and then all the way around the barn. And that water that is now spraying on top of the roof is going into the gutter, and that gutter is essentially going right here to this pipe. And I got a little shut off on the bottom of this. You can see there's a little plug right there, and what happens is if I want to open that plug, I can just have it drain down here, and that goes into the ground out front by the garden. And if I don't want to drain that, basically this collects all the crappy water and leaves and that kind of stuff that you can see are now falling. But instead of that going into the cistern, that all ends up going down here. And when that is full, the cleaner water goes up inside this and goes into this cistern. So if I can get that opened up, you can see that we are just about full, and that water is coming in from, again, from the roof. And what I've got now is I've got water from the cistern being recycled up to the roof with this C-Flow pump. Got this on Amazon. I'll give you the link to it. But basically, this is a 45 psi pump, so it can put 45 pounds of pressure. It's basically 3 amps. Runs off of 12 volts. So right now I'm running it off a 12 volt battery right here, and thing is running great. It even comes with a little filter so that the pump doesn't get all screwed up. And I am running from the drain on this cistern right here, and that pipe runs up and runs to this side. I got a valve right here so I can turn it on and off, and then runs through the filter and runs to the pump. And you can, not sure if you can hear it or not, but that thing's running. It's pretty quiet. And then that runs through this valve here, and I can turn down the water volume or turn up the water volume just by turning that little valve. And just runs up here and up on top of the roof and sprays water all over the roof. And it's getting collected, so it's recycled back into the cistern. Now, of course, over time, there will be some water evaporation. So while it's evaporating, we'll lose some water. But this is a rainwater collection system, and any rainwater we get is going to fill this tank back up. So I'm pleased that this is working and working well. And even though this is running off of a temporary emergency battery right now, I'm going to hook this whole thing up so it runs off the solar in the barn. And you can see my video on how to solar power a barn, where all my fans and everything else are being powered by solar to keep my animals cool in the hot summer, and keep this building cool. And the building is a good 10 to 12 degrees cooler than the ambient temperature. And got some boy goats interested in a girl goat right now. But anyway, it keeps everybody from dying of literally heat exhaustion, and that's all running off of solar panels. And again, I'll put a link to that video, and I'll also put links to this little pump right here. And just as a note, these little valves that I put on and this piping basically all came from Lowe's, so that I could hook this thing up to hoses. And just to show you it can be done, I've got the pump now running off of my charge controller, and so the wire is going up over here. I haven't encased it yet in conduit, but you can see the wires going out and running up along the top there. Outside to the building. And running out here to the pump. And now that pump is running entirely off of solar power. So the pump is running off of solar, and you can see there's water coming off the roof from the water coming off the roof from the sprinkler. So we've got our water, which is recycled from our rainwater catchment, and the pump is now running off of 12 volts solar on the roof of my barn.